2014 has been an eventful year, from major health stories to space exploration and conflict in the Middle East. Here are some of the headlines that shook the world over the last 12 months. The outbreak of the Ebola virus in West Africa showed the world just how vulnerable poverty-stricken countries are to deadly diseases. Beginning in Guinea at the end of 2013, the Ebola epidemic quickly spread to neighbouring Liberia and Sierra Leone. The worst outbreak of the disease in history. By November, the World Health Organization estimated that there had been over 16,000 cases and to date 7,000 deaths. Also at the beginning of the year, the tragedy of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Travelling from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, the aircraft vanished on Saturday, March the 8th, with 239 people on board. Relatives of the missing passengers were left angry and distraught as the largest search in aviation history spread from the South China Sea to the Indian Ocean. As weeks stretched to months and the numerous reports of floating debris led nowhere, baffled aviation experts admitted that MH370's final resting place could take years to discover. That wasn't the only news for Malaysian Airlines. Later in the year, flight MH17, a scheduled international flight from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, was shot down on July 17th, killing all 283 passengers and 17 crew on board. According to American and German intelligence sources, the plane was shot down by pro-Russian separatists, but Russia blamed the Ukrainian government. The investigation is still ongoing, and the final accident report expected August 2015. April 2014 saw democracy in action as India went to the polls in what was to become the largest general election in the world. With around 815 million Indians registered to vote, the mammoth democratic process concluded on May 12th. 4 days later, Hindu nationalist Narendra Modi, the candidate for India's main opposition BJP party, was declared the winner, having taken 60% of the seats in parliament. At the same time, over in the Middle East, a radical Islamic group and an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, who call themselves the Islamic State, rose to prominence when it captured vast amounts of territory in Iraq and Syria. Known for their brutality, Islamic State are responsible for a series of videotaped beheadings of American and British hostages, including US journalist James Foley and British aid worker Alan Henning. Recruitment of young Muslim men to their cause has been a concern for many governments in Europe. As modern conflicts raged, we also stopped to remember the sacrifices made by men and women in a conflict of the past. July 28th marked the 100th anniversary of the start of World War I. At the Tower of London, a huge art installation of ceramic poppies, one for each man and woman who died from Britain and its colonies, drew huge crowds. It was entitled Blood-Swept Lands and Seas of Red. A conflict that dominated the news over the last year was the Israel-Palestine attacks in Gaza. The 50-day war killed more than 2,100 Palestinians, most of them civilians, and 72 people on the Israeli side, all but 6 of whom were soldiers. Such was the devastation caused by the bombardment. A UN human rights chief suggested Israel may be guilty of war crimes. The September eruption of Mount Ontake, caused by a buildup of steam, became the deadliest volcanic eruption in Japan in over a century. 57 people were killed in the eruption, which caught hikers in a cloud of dust and debris. Despite heated televised debates and a hard-fought campaign by both the yes and no camps, on September 18th, Scots voted to reject independence and remain part of the United Kingdom. Since the vote, more powers have been handed to the Scottish Parliament via devolution, which includes the country having greater powers over taxation and benefits in the future. It was deemed a victory for the Prime Minister David Cameron. Over in the US, the Senate Intelligence Committee released hundreds of pages of a report of secret CIA torture practices conducted over 7 years at hidden sites around the world after the 9/11 attacks. The report contained a substantial amount of never-before-revealed information about the Bush-era torture program, including a number of CIA detainees and certain techniques used. Later in the year saw a victory for science. After a 10-year mission across the cosmos, on November 12th, the Rosetta space probe made history by deploying and landing its Philae mini-lab on the surface of a comet. Travelling at a speed of 135,000 kilometers an hour, the European Space Agency likened it to landing a washing machine on a speeding bullet. In December, news broke of a siege in Sydney, Australia. An Islamic gunman held 17 people inside a cafe hostage, forcing some of the hostages to hold up an Islamic banner at the window. 2 hostages, as well as the gunman, were left dead when commandos stormed the cafe. As the year came to an end, a horrific attack on a Pakistani school left the world in shock. 132 students and 9 staff members were killed when Taliban gunmen broke into the school and opened fire in the bloodiest massacre the country has seen for years.